To date, Amy continued, steady and relentless, 12 arrests have been made, including 4 HOA presidents, 3 city officials, 2 real estate developers, and 3 property managers. More are coming, a reporter shouted. What about Barbara Garcia specifically? Amy's jaw set, her eyes were cold steel. Her case is unique. She didn't just steal money, she weaponized trust. She silenced witnesses to a child's near death. She corrupted public officials, destroyed families, and when cornered, tried to annihilate an entire community with stolen personal data. That makes her crimes particularly heinous. The screen cut to Barbara Again, this time flanked by federal marshals. No bail possible. Her power stripped away. My phone rang. Helen again. Larry, she said, voice shaking. The FBI's at my door. They want me to talk about Barbara. Do it, I told her. Tell them everything. By noon, agents had interviewed nearly every neighbor. Every fine, every bogus violation, every extorted sale was documented. The FBI even had Barbara's surveillance file, reams of stolen credit reports, spy dossiers, medical records. And the money? The feds found more than $500,000 hidden offshore. Barbara hadn't been planning to retire in Maplewood as she'd been planning her escape. Amy finally came home, exhausted but electric. She sank into a chair with a sandwich. 8 weeks? I asked. You've been running a federal investigation for 8 weeks? Her tired smile didn't reach her eyes. Longer. The Dodge brought me in while I was still in Denver. Maplewood was part of the plan. Becoming police chief here, that was the cover. My throat tightened. So Broken Bar, our marriage was cover too? Amy grabbed my face in both hands, forcing me to meet her eyes. Us? That's the only thing in this whole mess that was real. I couldn't tell you everything, Amy said softly, her eyes steady on mine, but I never lied about us. Never. I hesitated before asking, so Broken Bar, what happens now? Part of me dreaded the answer. Now, she drew a breath. Now Barbara faces federal charges, minimum 20 years, so likely more. The Andersons are suing. The other HOAs are being dissolved. Then, for the first time in days, she smiled. A real smile. And every single dollar stolen will be returned with interest. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, sighed. Press conference at 2. The Attorney General's flying in. The Attorney General? My disbelief echoed in my own ears. Amy nodded. This is bigger than Maplewood. Barbara stumbled into exposing a nationwide issue. Corrupt HOAs are everywhere, and thanks to her, we've got the map to bring them all down. That afternoon, the Attorney General announced Operation Neighborhood Watch, a sweeping federal crackdown on HOA corruption, using Maplewood as the model. Barbara's mugshot spread like wildfire, plastered across news outlets, late-night shows, documentaries. Online, hashtags exploded. #Barbara the Monster trended nationwide. Horror stories about HOAs poured in, people emboldened by her downfall. But the moment that broke the internet came live from the courthouse. As Barbara was escorted in shackles toward federal custody, she spotted a camera and snapped, "Property values!" She shrieked, her voice cracking. "What about property values? You'll see. Chaos without me." The clip went viral instantly. Within hours it was remixed, auto-tuned, slapped on t-shirts. "What about property values?" became the ironic anthem of her downfall, repeated endlessly as a punchline to tyrants everywhere. That night, Maplewood held a block party. No permits, no approvals, no oversight. The HOA was gone, and federal agents had bigger things to worry about than noise levels. Neighbors brought food, drinks, and years of pent-up joy. Helen raised a plastic cup of wine toward Amy, "To the one who freed us from the tyrant of the clipboard." Amy clinked cups and corrected gently, "To USA for standing together, for trusting each other again." Children played long past approved hours. Music blared far louder than regulations ever allowed. Dogs ran leashless, laughter rising with them. For the first time in years, people spoke freely without fear of retaliation. Sliding my arm around Amy, I asked quietly, "Any regrets?" "None," she said, then smirked. "Well, one." "What's that?" "I always wanted to paint our mailbox purpley just to see Barbara's face, then paint it." I laughed. "Who's going to stop you now?" She grinned. "Tomorrow morning, I'm buying the brightest purple paint I can find." We stood together, watching a neighborhood heal itself in beautiful disorder. The chaos Barbara predicted had come here, but it wasn't destruction, it was freedom. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Amy gave me a small nod to answer. "Mr. Scott," a cold, authoritative voice said. "This is Assistant Director Smith, FBI. We need to talk about your wife's real assignment, the one she hasn't told you about." Barbara Garcia was never the end game. She was only the beginning. "Tell me, how much do you actually know about why you moved to Maplewood?" Monday morning carried a finality I couldn't shake. Some stories don't end happily, they just end. The federal courthouse loomed like a marble fortress of judgment. Barbara Garcia was brought in, looking smaller, older, her arrogance stripped away with her power suit. She wore orange now. No clipboard, no rules, no neighbors to bully, just a disgraced woman facing the system she thought she controlled. "The defendant faces 93 federal counts," the prosecutor declared, voice resonant in the chamber. "Racketeering, wire fraud, cyberterrorism, identity theft, obstruction of justice." Her court-appointed attorney shuffled papers nervously, clearly out of his depth. "How does the defendant plead?" the judge asked. Barbara whispered, "Not guilty." Louder. "Not guilty," she said, her voice cracking. The words fell flat, as hollow as her crumbling empire. The prosecution laid everything bare. $480,000 in illegal fines, the Anderson incident and cover-up, 6 families forced out, city officials bribed, a $300,000 offshore stash, cyber attacks launched when she was cornered. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, his tone sharp, "Mrs. Garcia did not simply steal. She manipulated trust. She turned a community into a weapon. And when exposed, she tried to burn it all down." Barbara still clung to her delusion on the stand. "I was protecting property values," she insisted, "maintaining standards." "If people had just followed the rule as a Mrs. Garcia," the judge cut her off, his patience frayed. "A child nearly died because you valued a citation more than a life. For 3 years, you waged war on anyone who saw your cruelty. You corrupted officials, extorted families, and when caught, attempted mass harm." This was not about standards, it was about control. "The rules matter," Barbara cried desperately. "Without rules, there's chaos. Without compassion," the judge replied coldly, "there's cruelty. And you, Mrs. Garcia, have been nothing if not cruel." The sentence was delivered with finality. 25 years in federal prison, no parole for 15, full restitution to her victims, a lifetime ban from any position of authority. As marshals led her away, Barbara turned, eyes wide and wild. "You'll see, property values will collapse. Chaos will come. You beg for me back." The heavy doors slammed shut on her last delusion. On the courthouse steps, Helen summed it up simply. She never understood. It was never about property values. It was about people, about community, about living without fear of a knock on the door and a clipboard full of threats. And she was right. Ironically, property values rose. Maplewood was rebranded as the neighborhood that fought corruption. Families wanted to live where neighbors supported instead of spied on each other. The Andersons even returned, Emma walking with a limp but holding her head high, embraced by a community determined never to fail her again. Every Halloween, the neighborhood went wild in giant inflatables, outrageous decorations. No fines, no complaints. A sign appeared each year, "Chaos welcome here." It became Maplewood's proud motto, a badge of honor. And when someone inevitably joked, "But what about property values?" the laughter that followed was deep and healing, the kind of laughter born from surviving something terrible together. Because we'd learned what Barbara never could. A neighborhood's value isn't in its conformity or its rules. It's in its people, in kindness, in the choice to stand together. The FBI operation spread nationwide. Dozens of corrupt HOAs fell. Hundreds of petty tyrants were stripped of their clipboards. Don't be a Barbara became a warning taught in real estate schools. But the greatest victory wasn't the headlines or the prosecutions. It was in the little things: a kids chalking sidewalks without fear, gardens blooming freely, mailboxes painted in any color neighbors wanted. And that, finally, was freedom. That night, as Amy and I were getting ready for bed, she sat down on the edge of the mattress with something in her hands, a sealed envelope. stamped with the FBI crest. "They gave me this when the case was officially closed," she explained, running her thumb along the seal. "Told me not to open it until after Barbara's sentencing." Her hands trembled as she broke it open. I watched her expression shift to first pale, then confused, then shocked. "Larry, a broken bar," she whispered. "Barbara has a daughter. She's been writing her mother every week in prison, and now she's applying to law school, specializing in whole law." 5 years passed. Maplewood transformed from a place suffocated by fear into a neighborhood thriving with trust. I was planting our third garden, Nami, a ridiculous grinning frog that would have sent Barbara into cardiac arrest, when a notification buzzed on my phone. Former HOA president released early from federal prison. The words froze me, even though I knew the day would come. My hands were still covered in potting soil when Amy found me staring at the screen. "I know," she said quietly. "Got the alert this morning. Good behavior, rehab programs." She served 5 of her 8 years. 5 years, I muttered. "Too long, a broken bar and not nearly long enough." "Don't worry," Amy assured me. "Lifetime restrictions, no boards, no finances." "She's on heavy probation, and there's a restraining order 500 feet from any victim." I raised an eyebrow. "That's basically the whole town." "Exactly," Amy said, and her smile told me that was no accident. Maplewood had flourished in those years. The rigid uniformity Barbara once demanded had been replaced with personality and color. No two homes looked alike anymore. Gardens spilled over with individuality instead of regulations. The Andersons had built a wheelchair ramp for Emma, lined with her favorite flowers, and nobody counted varieties or cross-checked them with an approved list. That night, Amy and I headed to the community center, not for an home meeting as those were long gone, but for the monthly block party planning session. Helen, the heart of the neighborhood, had taken on the role of unofficial organizer. No president, no board, just a neighbor who loved bringing people together. The room was alive with laughter, kids darting between tables, dogs sprawled under chairs. It was the same hall where Barbara once ruled with threats, now filled with warmth and celebration. "Halloween's coming up," Helen announced. "Who's on decorations?" Hands shot up everywhere. The Andersons offered to map trick-or-treating routes. David volunteered his garage for the haunted house. Ideas bounced around the room with energy and excitement. A newcomer raised her hand timidly. "Yuma, broken bar, are there any restrictions on, like, what decorations we can use?" The room erupted with laughter, not unkind, but knowing. "Honey," Helen said with a smile, "the only rule here is have fun, though maybe no actual hazards. A Jim zombie nearly gave the mailman a heart attack last year." More laughter. Jim looked proud. Afterward, Amy and I walked home beneath streetlights strewn with whatever neighbors felt like hanging. Wind chimes, bird feeders, even a disco ball scattering rainbows across the pavement. "Ever miss the uniformity?" I teased. "God, no," she replied, squeezing my hand. "Thee's a messy, human, Olivia. This is what neighborhoods are supposed to be. This is what we fought for." A car slowed beside us. Illinois plates. A woman at the wheel, driving cautiously. Amy tensed instantly. Her instincts never really switched off. The car rolled to a stop. The window came down. My chest tightened. It was Barbara. 5 years had aged her 15. Her hair was gray, her face lined deep with exhaustion and regret. For a moment, no one spoke. "You're violating your restraining order," Amy said evenly, though I could feel the tension in her grip. "I know," Barbara whispered, her voice brittle, nothing like the shrill dictator we remembered. "I just a broken bar needed to see it. The neighborhood, one last time before I leave." "Leave?" I asked carefully. "My sister in California, she's giving me a job, a place to stay." Barbara's knuckles widened on the steering wheel. I wanted to apologize to everyone, but especially the Andersons. "Is a broken bar?" "She's in high school now, doing well," Amy answered. Barbara's eyes brimmed with tears. "Good. That's good." "Yeah, broken bar. I killed that child." Every day in prison, I saw her face, the sirens, her mother screaming. I twisted myself into something monstrous, trying to keep it from happening again. All those rules, all that control a broken bar, but all I did was destroy more lives. Her voice broke completely. I became the thing I thought I was preventing. Amy stepped closer. Her voice was steady. "Yes, you did." Barbara flinched, but nodded. "I'm sorry." "I know it doesn't change anything," But I'm sorry. Get help. Amy stood not with kindness, but with truth. Not just prison classes. Real therapy. Face it, Barbara. For real this time. I will, Barbara whispered. She started the engine. Take care of the neighborhood. It looks a broken bar. Happy. She drove away slowly, carefully, as though she finally understood that rushing only leads to ruin. We never saw her again. The next morning, I was watering our wildflower patch when Emma jogged past 16 now, confident, alive, the limp barely noticeable. Morning, Mr. Scott. She called with a grin. Morning, Emma. Training for track? Yeah, coach says I might make varsity. She waved and sprinted off, her ponytail bouncing. I stood there thinking about second chances, about how guilt can twist some people into monsters and how survival can turn others into something stronger. Our grass stood 4 inches tall. Our mailbox was still the brightest purple Amy could find. The gnome frog winked at me in the morning sun. Our neighborhood was messy, chaotic, alive, and finally, free. My phone buzzed again, another alert. I almost ignored it, until I saw the headline. Federal judge orders retrial in Garcia-Cazin. New evidence suggests entrapment. I looked up, ready to call for Amy, but she was already in the doorway, badge and gun in hand. I know, she said grimly. Her lawyer found something about how we got into that house. Larry, a broken bar, we might have to move again. And just like that, Barbara Garcia wasn't finished with us after all. You'll regret this, Barbara hissed when my wife refused to pay the absurd $90 fine. But here's the kicker. When the police showed up, they backed away from her. Why? Because Amy is not who everyone assumed she was. The ending will make Barbara wish she'd never dialed 911. Can you guess who Barbara really is? Stick around and you won't believe what happens next. Amy and I had just moved into 421 Willow Court, a charming house. Needed work. Price too good to pass up. The seller was practically desperate to get out, practically shoving the keys at us at closing. Fresh start, Amy murmured, squeezing my hand as we signed. She'd just taken a promotion in a government job she was oddly vague about. New job, new neighborhood. What could possibly go wrong? Famous last words. The first week felt perfect. Boxes unpacked, a few neighbors met, things settling into place. Then Barbara Garcia showed up. I was fixing the mailbox when she strode over, clipboard in hand, a mid-50s, peroxide blonde highlights, the kind who likely had inspirational wall plaques. Welcome to Maplewood, she said with a smile that reached her teeth but not her eyes. I'm Barbara, HOA president. I like to greet new homeowners personally. She acted like she was doing us a favor, but her gaze swept our property like she was hunting. Larry, nice to meet you, I said, matching her cheer as best I could. She cocked her head at the house. This is a special property, she said. The previous owners, a broken bar, didn't appreciate the importance of rules. Their negligence had consequences. She tapped her clipboard. I have your welcome packet, 300 pages of HOA guidelines. I've flagged the important sections. That night Amy flipped through the packet and grimaced. Listen to this, she said. Vehicles must be parked facing east to ensure uniform appearance. Who writes these rules? Apparently Barbara does. Amy went quiet after a few pages. When I asked what she'd said earlier about the previous owners, she only repeated that they hadn't followed the rules and had faced consequences. She then opened her laptop. I want to know this house's history. A couple of hours later she shut the computer with a troubled look. The Andersons had lived here, a family of 4, until their daughter Emma had an accident, a severe allergic reaction. An ambulance couldn't reach the house because a car was parked across the driveway. Emma survived but with lasting complications. The family moved away months later. The report didn't say who'd blocked the driveway, but Barbara had filed a dozen HOA violations against the Andersons after the incident. Grass high, trash can placement, even fines over a wheelchair ramp put in for Emma. She'd slapped them with an $800 fine plus daily penalties. Amy's face went hard. No wonder the price was low, she said. The next morning I was measuring for new house numbers when Barbara appeared again, like she had ninja timing. Morning, Larry. I see you're making improvements. You did file the architectural modification form, right? Any external change needs approval. Section 43. She jotted on her clipboard. I'll let this one pass since you're new, But next time a broken bar can I ask about the previous owners? I said. Her expression froze. What about them? She snapped. They were difficult, always in violation. People need to understand rules exist for everyone's safety. Her knuckles widened on the clipboard. That child's accident could have been avoided if people had followed parking regulations. She checked her watch. I have rounds to finish, remember. 72 hours to correct anything I know today. After she left I texted Amy. Barbara blamed the Andersons' daughter's accident on improper parking. Amy's reply, keep her talking when she comes by. I'm looking into something. That evening I found Amy surrounded by documents, deep in research. The Andersons' complaint against the HOA after the accident had been dismissed and who was on the review board? Barbara. Also a councilman named Bradley. Barbara had been trying to buy our house for 2 years. The Andersons had refused her offers. The implication hit both of us hard. She wanted the house where a little girl nearly died because of an HOA issue. Amy's expression went dark. I think Barbara's more involved than she's letting on, she said. As Amy pulled up records, her methodical side took over. She filmed, photographed, recorded every interaction. Over the next couple of weeks Barbara ratcheted up the harassment by the book. Daily visits listing violations, a grass height, flower choices, even the angle of our garden hose. She had a clause about proper hose storage angle. No joke. Amy documented everything. She's building a case to build a case, Amy told me, organizing files and labeling screenshots. This isn't random. Amy's digging turned up a pattern. 6 families had moved out in 3 years after prolonged conflicts with Barbara, all from our stretch of street. The same stretch that had witnessed the Anderson incident. Barbara had publicly used the accident as a cautionary tale at community meetings, recasting herself as the champion of safety while quietly trying to buy out the homes that overlooked what had happened. She's trying to erase witnesses or control the narrative, Amy said. And then she played a clip from a meeting where Barbara stood at the podium and told the story as proof that her rules had to be enforced. Then things escalated. One afternoon the doorbell rang and Barbara arrived flanked by a man in an expensive suit. Larry, this is Councilman Bradley. He's on the HOA advisory board, she announced. Bradley had the practiced charm of a used car salesman. There have been some compliance issues, Barbara said. Would you mind mediating? We'd lived there only weeks, but Barbara produced a color-coded binder filled with time-stamped photos, trash cans from several angles, grass measurements, pictures of Amy's car facing west instead of east. You've documented 26 violations in 3 weeks, she said with relish. Bradley smiled and added, Barbara runs a tight ship. It keeps property values up. The fine structure is reasonable. Barbara pointed to a laminated page. First violation, warning. Second, $30 third, $60 fourth through 10th, $90 each. You're at a, she calculated, clearly enjoying it, $1,140. I refused to pay for what I called imaginary violations. Bradley insisted the fines were documented and legally enforceable. Barbara, ever helpful, offered a payment plan or, with a certain glint in her eye, a sale. The market's good, she said. I can connect you with buyers. The thinly veiled threat was clear. When I pushed back, she hinted at a special assessment, road repairs, $2,000 per household due within 30 days. The board voted last night, she said. I guess the board she meant was one she and Bradley controlled. She scowled when I called it slander. After they left I called Amy. She watched the footage and zeroed in on Bradley. See how he keeps looking at Barbara? He's not leading, he's following. She paused the video on his hand at an line where a wedding ring had been. Recent divorce, she noted. Desperate people make bad allies, and desperate people make mistakes. She said she needed to verify a few things and that it might take days. I asked again what her job actually was, as the way she was handling this felt bigger than routine government admin. She kissed my forehead and smiled. Let Barbara think she's winning. When she gets overconfident, that's when we move. The side of the bed was cold and empty. Through the bedroom window I saw Amy standing in the driveway, talking on her phone at 3 in the morning. Yes, I understand the risks, she murmured, listening intently. But if Barbara Garcia finds out who I am before Tuesday, a broken bar. She paused, eyes narrowing. number. She can't know, not until she calls the police herself. Tuesday morning arrived under a bruised sky. Amy took a half day from work, saying she had paperwork to sort. She was in the garage, arranging folders, when Barbara's Prius rolled up. "She's here," I whispered. Amy stepped out in jeans and an old Police Academy t-shirt. "Stay inside and keep recording," she told me. "Trust me." I watched from the living room window as Barbara marched up the path, waving a yellow violation notice like a flag. Helen across the street was suddenly very intent on her roses. Other neighbors pretended to check their mail. Barbara's voice rang loud and sharp across the yard. "Amy Scott, I need payment immediately. Good morning to you, too, Barbara," Amy said, unruffled. "Don't play games. $90. Right now." Barbara thrust the notice forward a grass height. "Wrong mailbox color, parking the wrong way." "It's all documented," she insisted. "I'm not paying this," Amy replied. Barbara's voice pitched higher. "Excuse me? No, I'm not paying fraudulent fines from an illegal HOA," Amy said. Barbara's face flushed purple. "How dare you? These fines are legally binding." "They're not," Amy snapped back. "Your HOA charter expired 2 years ago. You have no authority." "That's Aaliyah Bradley says," Barbara started. "Bradley says what you pay him to say," Amy cut in. "I'm not paying $90, period." Barbara's hands shook as she fumbled for her phone. "Then you leave me no choice. I'm calling the police." She jabbed at the screen and spoke into it. 911. "This is Barbara Garcia, HOA President. I need officers at 421 Willow Court. A resident is refusing to pay required HOA fines and is being threatening." "I never threatened you," Amy called out loud enough for the dispatcher to hear. Barbara, triumphant, hung up. "You'll pay the $90 plus legal fees when they arrest you," she crowed. Amy leaned against our car and smiled. "Barbara, you just made the biggest mistake of your life." Neighbors had gathered. "Is that a threat?" Barbara shrieked. "It's a fact," Amy said calmly. Minutes later a patrol car pulled up. Officer Thompson stepped out, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Barbara rushed forward. "This woman refuses to pay $90 in legally binding fines." Thompson sighed. "Ma'am, HOA disputes are civil matters. We don't arrest people for that." "She threatened me," Barbara insisted. "I told her she was making a mistake calling you," Amy said evenly. Thompson glanced between them. "Ladies, can we? I want her arrested." Barbara stamped her foot. Thompson pulled out his notepad and listened as Barbara recited her list. "Grass height, mailbox color, directional parking." He blinked. "You called 911 over grass height?" "Standards matter," Barbara replied sharply. "If you won't do your job, I'll call your supervisor," Thompson said. Amy stepped forward and slowly opened her wallet. Thompson's eyes widened as he read the badge inside. "CHFA Broken Bar Chief Scott." A collective gasp swept the yard. Barbara stumbled back. You're the new chief of police?" "6 weeks on the job," Amy's voice carried. "And Barbara, you just filed a false police report." "No, I reported an actual crime," Barbara began. "You reported a civil dispute as an emergency and claimed I threatened you," Amy said. "The 911 recording will show no threats were made. Filing a false report is a misdemeanor." Barbara's knees wobbled. "This is entrapment." "No," Amy said. "This is consequence." She turned to Thompson. "Mrs. Garcia, are you still insisting I pay this $90? "Yes," Barbara said, voice small. "You owe it." "For the record," Amy said, "this HOA charter expired 2 years ago. These fines are fraudulent. You are operating an illegal enterprise." "That's not true," Barbara squealed. "Bradley verified it." "Councilman Bradley," Amy said, producing another stack of papers. "Who have you been paying $20,000 to look the other way?" She flipped a bank statement toward Thompson. Barbara went white. "And I have evidence you've targeted specific houses, the ones that overlooked where Emma Anderson nearly died 3 years ago." "Care to explain that?" Amy asked. "I don't know what you're talking about," Barbara stammered. Helen stepped forward, voice steady. "Barbara, we all remember you that day. You said a delivery truck blocked the driveway." "It was a delivery truck," Barbara cried. "Then why have you spent 3 years driving out every witness?" Amy demanded. "The Williamses, the Johnsons, they all watched what happened. Then they got fines until they left." Barbara began to shake, muttering about lawyers. "Good idea," Amy said flatly. "You'll need one." Thompson nodded to Amy. "For now, Mrs. Garcia is free to go, but don't leave town and don't access any HOA computers or bank accounts. You are under investigation. You can't do this." Barbara protested. "Document that Mrs. Garcia called 911 for a civil matter and filed a false report claiming threats that didn't happen," Amy instructed. "Yes, Chief," Thompson wrote. Barbara lurched toward her car, spun, and hissed, "This isn't over. I have powerful friends." "You'll be sorry." "That sounded like a threat," Amy said loudly. "I heard it," Thompson confirmed. Barbara screeched off, tires squealing. The neighbors buzzed as they drifted back to their yards. Helen approached us. "Is it true about the charter?" "Every word," I answered. Amy grinned as we stepped outside. "Surprise," she said. "Sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. I wanted to see how far she'd push it." "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now," Amy's face turned serious. "Now she panics." "Panicked people make terrible choices." Her phone buzzed. She read the message and her expression hardened. "Speaking of terrible choices," she said, "Barbara just accessed something she shouldn't have. Something that could ruin far more than my reputation." I watched my wife play chess while Barbara thought it was checkers. "Have you ever seen someone walk right into their own trap?" Amy asked, eyes bright. By morning the neighborhood was in an uproar. Barbara had been posting all night on the community page accusing the police department of corruption and calling the new chief a fraud. Word spread fast. Amy leafed through the angry posts over coffee and only smirked. "She's predictable. When cornered, she attacks." "Are you worried about her stirring people up online?" I asked. "That's why I have Thompson watching her," she said. Helen phoned to warn us. Barbara was going door to door with a petition to remove Amy as chief. "Let her," Amy replied when I relayed the news. "Each signature is another witness to her harassment." By midday Barbara had launched a website as slick, professional, and poisonous. It mixed some true facts with vicious lies. Yes, Amy had worked in Denver. Yes, her partner Tom Rodriguez had died, but Barbara twisted the story to paint Amy as the cause of his death. "This is slander," I said. "It's worse," Amy replied, taking screenshots. "She's been illegally accessing personnel files, my file included." "That's federal." "How could she get that?" I asked. "Bradley helped," Amy said. "She called Officer Thompson." "Bring Bradley in for questioning," she ordered. That afternoon Barbara organized a concerned citizens meeting at the community center, promising shocking revelations about the new police chief. Amy put on her uniform. "You're not going," I told her. "Of course I am," she said. "This is exactly what I've been waiting for." The room was packed. Barbara clicked through slides and distributed printed copies of her website. "Thank you for coming," she began. "I know many of you are confused after yesterday. I'm here to tell the truth." She showed edited headlines and selective excerpts, painting a distorted portrait of Amy. From the back of the room, Amy stood and spoke simply. "Why would a Denver cop with this history come to Maplewood?" "To investigate corruption." All eyes turned. Amy walked down the aisle in full uniform. "Please continue, Mrs. Garcia." "You're doing my job for me," she said. Barbara's hands trembled. "You can't be here. This is a private meeting, a public building. These documents are legal. Personnel files are not public record," Amy said. "How did you obtain them?" "A federal crime," Amy finished firmly. "So is identity theft, which you committed when you used my social security number to run background checks." She lifted her phone. "And since you claim you have nothing to hide, you won't mind if I play this?" Bradley's voice filled the community center through the speaker. "Barbara paid me $5,000 to get the files. Said she needed leverage. I used my committee admin access. I knew it was wrong. I'm sorry." The room erupted. Barbara's hand went limp, dropping the presentation remote. "That's a broken bar. That's entrapment," she cried. "No, Barbara," Amy said, climbing onto the stage. "That's a confession." Gasps rippled through the crowd as Amy advanced the projector to a new slide. "Let's look at Barbara's HOA finances." Figures filled the screen. Nearly $500,000 collected in just 2 years. "Want to know where it went?" People leaned in. Amy's finger traced the columns. Payouts to her hand-picked buyers, the ones who conveniently purchased homes from families she forced out. Checks to contractors who never did the work. and $60,000 labeled as a management fees for an HOA that doesn't legally exist. Those are private records, Barbara shrieked. They're evidence, Amy shot back, collected under a warrant this morning while you were too busy building websites. The murmurs grew heavier, angrier. Amy's tone sharpened. Every single family you targeted had one thing in common. They saw you block Emma Anderson's driveway during a medical emergency. 14 minutes, Barbara. 14 minutes you spent scribbling a citation about a hose while Emma fought for her life. Stop it. Barbara's voice cracked as she stumbled backward. The truth hurts, doesn't it? Amy pressed. Barbara snatched the microphone, trembling. Fine. Yes, I was there, but it wasn't my fault. If the Andersons had followed the rules, none of it would have happened. Garden hoses in the driveway, toys in the yard. Do they deserve it? As she froze, realizing what she'd admitted. The silence in the room was suffocating. They deserved what, Barbara? Amy asked quietly, almost gently. Panic flashed in Barbara's eyes. She bolted toward the exit only to find Officer Thompson blocking the doorway. Going somewhere, Mrs. Garcia? He asked coolly. This is a false arrest, she screeched. I'll sue. Barbara Garcia, Thompson said as he cuffed her. You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, unlawful database access, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit racketeering. Barbara thrashed against the cuffs, screaming at the crowd. You'll regret this. Without me, property values will crash. This place will fall into chaos. You need me. No, Barbara. Helen's voice rang clear as she rose from her seat. We needed neighbors. All you gave us was fear. The applause that followed drowned out Barbara's wails as she was led away. Amy turned to the stunned residents. Now, let's talk about how to recover the money she stole. The meeting broke apart in a flurry of whispers, outrage, and relief. But before I could breathe, Amy's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her face drained of color. What do you mean she had a dead man's switch? She whispered. Her eyes snapped to me. Laria, check your email, right now. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket. A storm of new messages lit up the screen. Oh God, Amy murmured, staring at her own inbox. She's not just trying to take down the neighborhood. She's going after half the city government. A broken bar. Every fine was hush money. Every rule you invented. Another brick in the wall around your guilt. Barbara's gaze locked on the camera, and for the first time, the mask slipped completely. Her voice cracked. Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I blocked their driveway. Yes, I heard them screaming, but I had already started writing the citation. You can't just stop mid-violation. There are procedures. There are rules. Her confession hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Even the livestream comments stalled into silence. Helen's voice was slow, venomous. You let a child almost die a broken bar because you didn't want to stop writing a ticket. The rules matter, Barbara whispered, shrinking. Her voice sounded frail, almost childlike. Amy's tone turned iron hard. Barbara Garcia, you're under arrest again, this time for cyber terrorism, wire fraud, and violating your bail conditions. Barbara clutched at the furniture like it might save her. I'm in my own home, broadcasting crimes, harassing victims, accessing HOA computers you were explicitly ordered not to touch, Amy recited. She motioned to Thompson and two other officers who stepped forward. Take her in. And this time no bail. As the cuffs snapped around her wrists for the second time in 2 days, Barbara's wild eyes locked on the lens of her own phone. Check your property values in 6 months. You'll beg me to come back. Without me, there will be chaos. The live stream cut abruptly, but not before capturing the neighborhood gathered in her living room, watching the woman who had terrorized them hauled away. The viewer count surged past 10,000. Barbara had wanted a stage, yes, she got one, and it became her undoing. My phone buzzed. A text from Amy. Federal prosecutors are taking over. She just guaranteed herself 20 years, minimum. I looked at the crowd trickling out of Barbara's house, angry, hurt, still reeling from the secrets she'd blasted across the internet, and yet, for the first time, they seemed united in relief that her reign was finally over. Maybe chaos was what we needed. At least chaos was honest. As Barbara was led into the waiting vehicle, Helen tugged my arm. Her eyes darted around nervously. Laria, there's something you need to know. Something about Amy. Barbara wasn't wrong about Denver, but she only had half the story. What do you mean? Helen slipped a folded newspaper clipping from her purse. Your wife isn't just a police chief. She's been hunting people like Barbara for years. And there's a reason the FBI is really here. That revelation rattled me harder than Barbara's downfall. My wife, the woman I shared coffee with every morning, was running a federal sting operation, and I hadn't even known it. Have you ever discovered your spouse was living a second life? If so, tell me in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone. Friday morning, I woke to the sound of helicopters, not news choppers, the federal ones, matte black, circling low over Maplewood like vultures. The windows trembled with their rhythm. Amy? I reached across the bed, cold sheets. She was already gone. I stumbled to the window. My jaw dropped. Black SUVs lined the street in tactical formation. Agents in FBI windbreakers moved with calculated precision, sweeping the neighborhood like it was a war zone. My phone buzzed. A text from Amy. Stay inside. Watch the news. I switched on Channel 9. Breaking news. Massive FBI raid, a corruption probe rocks Maplewood. The camera cut to Barbara's house, swarming with agents carrying box after box of seized evidence. Federal authorities are executing search warrants at multiple locations tied to a widespread corruption investigation. The reporter intoned. Sources linked today's raids to the dramatic arrest of HOA President Barbara Garcia. Another text from Amy. Check Barbara's website. I pulled it up. Gone was Barbara's smear campaign against my wife. In its place, a stark federal notice. This domain has been seized by the FBI as part of an ongoing investigation into wire fraud, racketeering, and corruption. The broadcast shifted to a split screen. Raids everywhere. Bradley, the councilman, led from his house in handcuffs, pajamas still on. City Hall agents rolling out entire filing cabinets. Barbara's management company employees corralled in the parking lot, stunned. Even the real estate firm she'd funneled sales through was being torn apart. This wasn't about one woman anymore. It was a network. And then Amy appeared on screen. She stood at a federal podium, flanked by prosecutors and FBI brass, dressed in full uniform. She looked exhausted but commanding, every inch the leader Barbara had tried to discredit. Good morning, she began. I'm Chief Amy Scott, working in coordination with the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. For the past 8 weeks, we've been investigating a criminal enterprise that used homeowners associations as a front for racketeering, extortion, and money laundering. An organizational chart appeared behind her. The names and lines made my head spin. This was not an isolated incident. Barbara Garcia was part of a network spanning 6 HOAs across 3 counties, stealing an estimated $2.4 million over 5 years. Gasps from reporters. Flashbulbs.